everybody. Happy Friday evening. It is June 3rd, 2022, 8:30 p.m. As always, I am Mike Barrera, one of your co-hosts for Across the Pitch. To my left is Dave Miller. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, I mean, it's a bit of a weird weekend here. We've got an extended weekend for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which means I think she's been the Queen of the United Kingdom for like 70 years now. It doesn't change much for me. I was in work the last couple of nights. Yeah, I mean, living life just usual. Trudging along. How about yourself?
About the same. I mean, I guess most people know by now, I have a very busy work schedule. Got a new role this past week, so it's been full transition mode, full throttle with that. My daughter is done school in about 21 calendar days, and then we go on a week vacation. So we're trying to push for that end of June, kind of get to that summer break, summer relaxation, which I desperately need. But regardless, Dave, we're not the only ones who need a break. The union need a break, and they
Yep.
are currently on an international break. Up until about the 18th of June, I think it is when they play against Cincinnati next. So, we don't have a press conference this week, but we did have a game this past week against New England, as well as a post game press conference, which we'll talk about a bit here in a few minutes. But the New England Revolution hosted the Union about a week ago, and the Union pull off the 1-1 draw, which we actually predict on the show. So, Dave, tip my hat to you. We predicted it correctly here.
Yep.
Uh, I know you caught some of the highlights. I know you couldn't catch the game live. What were your thoughts on the goals and just the overall, result that we got on the road?
I think overall probably a good point on the road. I think we sort of said at the start. I mean, we'd loved if they'd won the game, but again, it was going to be a difficult game regardless. New England have sort of had an iffy start to the year. Obviously, their CCL campaign sort of scuppered them a bit. That's why they had that slow start. They've started to pick up points now. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a good point overall. It's no surprise, no secret that the Union are drawing a lot of games at the moment. That's another one to add on to the tally. But I mean, yeah, I think you take a point on the road, especially considering this tough stretch they've had. It's not been like an easy tough. It's been a tough stretch for the players in terms of like
Mhm.
physically as well. They've
Yeah.
they've played 2 games. They played like 4 games in 2 weeks. They've been here, there, and everywhere. They've had to travel East Coast, West Coast, North and South. They've been everywhere. So I think, yeah, I think it's a good point, and now they can sort of put their feet up a little bit, relax ahead of getting back into that final stretch towards the end of the season. Trying to win as they look to hopefully get first place or in the top 2 seeds for the Eastern Conference.
Well, you mentioned putting up your feet. They had a lot of time to put up their feet on the traveling they did. They traveled about 14,000 miles, I think it was, in May.
Jeez, yeah,
Um, you look at the schedule. Well, let's go back a step here. So, for one, you looked at the schedule a month ago, right before our May Gauntlet episode, and we thought, "Holy hell, we're probably going to lose at least one or two of these matches."
yeah,
We didn't lose any. If you don't, I'm not
no,
talking about the Open Cup. I'm talking about regular season. We ended the month of May undefeated,
yeah,
even though we drew almost every single match except for the Portland game, which I chalked up as a loss. Um, we're still in second place
yeah,
behind NYCFC. Now it's funny because one of the commenters that I see on Twitter a lot, he said before the season started he thought the team would be at 24 points right now. Now they're, I believe, at 26.
yeah,
They're they're basically on pace for what most people thought they'd be, if not a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. Depends on how you graded the games. But you went to Nashville, opened their stadium. You went to LAFC, and you played obviously a tough opponent out there. The Red Bulls game, sure, you probably should have won that game. The Miami game, probably should have won that game. But if you chalked up two of those matches as a loss or one of those matches as a loss, essentially you kind of made up the points that way. And then
yeah,
you go to New England, you pull off a draw when you're missing basically three strikers because Ua wasn't coming in until later and Santos was kind of banged up and
yeah.
Corey Burke's been kind of irrelevant. So for all intents and purposes, you made it through it. Should that be the mindset of the Philadelphia Union fans? Should they be optimistic that they've had half a roster at times and they've been traveling across the country, but yeah, here they are in second place? Should we have optimism, or do you feel now, 30 days later, some negativity or some skepticism about this team's potential?
I think I can understand the like skepticism between or behind sort of the some of the worry about the team's potential, especially again, Jim keeps saying, "Oh, we're due a breakout game where we score 3 or 4 goals," but we're just not seeing it. It's like
Right.
there's games they've had chances to score 3, 4 goals and they're not taking the opportunities. Like they've again, they mean like okay, yeah, I mean they you could argue they got a bit lucky with the goal they scored against the Revs. They literally capitalised on. I don't even know what the defender was doing. He literally just had to pass it back to the goalkeeper or clear it, and he decided to pass it across the penalty area.
Yep.
And the one rule of as a defender is never pass the ball across your penalty area because that is why. Because literally something like that happens. You could even see with the goal, the goalkeeper anticipated he was playing the ball back to him. That's why he moved off his line. And then, he plays it across the back and Nuar's there. Obviously, with this probably his first touch of the game, it was great to see him score. But I think, again, like the team, they've had games like the Red Bulls game. The game was up on the plate for them. They were 1-0 up against 10 men and they were battering them.
Yeah.
They failed to take advantage. They had chances in the LAFC game, failed to take advantage. The Montreal game, again, they're 1-0 up in, sort of somewhat cruising, allowed them to get back in, Montreal to get back into it and couldn't close the game out. And, do you know what I mean? It's just sort of, in terms of they've had luck this year, there's no doubt. I mean, red cards been overturned, penalties, and things such as that. It sort of balanced itself out a bit, but they just haven't been clinical enough in terms of the chances that they've actually been presented. You could probably argue the Portland game is probably the most clinical they've been all season.
The Portland game feels like an anomaly at times
Yeah,
when I look at this past season. I mean, they just haven't had that consistent game where for 90 minutes they looked really strong. I mean, maybe early on in the season, and we talked about the luck of this team between February, March, and April. You felt very fortunate across the board. You
yeah,
felt that way in Portland when they got the goal reversed on them. It's like it should have been two
yeah,
one, ended up being 2-0. But there have been a lot of unfortunate moments. One of those unfortunate moments was in the New England match. For one, you're missing Carranza. Ua is still kind of, coming into the game. After his press conference after the game, he said he didn't expect to play at all, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And even Jim Curtin said he would not have put Ua in, or at
yeah,
least probably wouldn't have put it in if there wasn't a penalty kick that made it 1-0. So you really didn't know what you were going to get from him. And you had Paxton out of position. Gazdag seemed almost irrelevant at times because they just couldn't keep the ball out of their own zone. And
yeah,
it just seemed like they survived the battering that was the New England Revolution for the first or about 25 minutes of that first half. They really just kind of survived, honestly. They should have had at least one or two goals. They didn't. So
yeah,
is what it is. But then you finally get back into form. You start out that second half better. You're looking better. And then the unfortunate moment, which we've kind of dealt with all month, comes back and gets us again, where Jack Elliott, he's running along the box. New England tries to cross it in. His left arm is kind of outstretched. I can see the argument where you're saying it's maybe not a handball. I think it's a correct call.
yeah,
I thought it took a little bit too long, or maybe not too long, but I thought maybe actually, I'm thinking about the Portland game. Excuse me. It didn't take too long. The Portland one took too long.
yeah,
That's where I thought we got lucky. This one took much quicker. But overall, it seemed like that unfortunate moment where you just kind of shake your head and think, well, what's Jack Elliott supposed to do? And
yeah,
then 2 minutes later, we kind of make our own luck with Corey Burke. And you mentioned the defender. What is he doing passing the ball across the box? Mikael Ua actually discussed that goal, and he said Corey Burke did a great job pressing Omar Gonzalez. He makes a really stupid move across the box, and sure enough, Mikael Ua is sitting there waiting for it. So
yeah.
the luck has been very difficult for us to figure out over the past 30 days. It seems to be going one way and then shifts back the other. But what were your thoughts on just on that outcome with the first half? I mean, the fact that we survived that beating and then we have the Jack Elliott goal. What were your thoughts on that goal after that first half?
I mean, obviously, I didn't really see much of the first half. I saw probably like the final 10, 15 minutes there. I sort of watched a little bit of that in the pub. I was out in the pub, but
Yep.
it, again, they didn't look seriously troubled. Obviously, I can't comment on the opening period because I didn't get to
Mhm.
see it. But, I mean, they didn't look too bothered by it. I mean, it wasn't too not from what I'd seen. The Revs hadn't really stretched the game too much. There were a couple of moments, Andre Blake had to collect a cross or had a shot that was straight out, whatever. But I think they did that well with the pressure they were absorbed. I think they've they've done that all year. But again, as we've seen in a lot of games, they have that one lapse of concentration. There's always that goal that they can concede in them, and
Yeah,
that's something they need to cut out because. Again, I know obviously they got lucky against the Portland Timbers, but how a player was able to peel off them on the back and find themselves so unmarked at the back post, it shouldn't be happening.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, yeah, it was sort of a massive stroke of luck there. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a frustrating one defensively. This team that's looks so solid for such large periods, and they all switch off at that one moment, which
right.
then ultimately always seems to cost them. I mean, that again they got lucky in that instance, but like you'll see a team switch off and the team have a massive chance, and they end up like missing the opportunity. It seems that when it's against the Union, it always seems to go against them. With the Red Bulls goal, which was probably one of the only real key chances they made in the entire game, really,
Yeah.
in terms of like memorable moments. So yeah, they got heavily lucky with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. You look at the Montreal match. When you're up 1-0 at home, and it really wasn't a terrible defensive moment, but it seemed like it was just one of those moments that was waiting to happen. And sure enough, Glesnes gets beat kind of on the inside, and we get 1-1, and that's the match right there. But in terms of the post game press conference after that New England match, Jim Curtin highlighted the fact that they probably didn't deserve to even come away with points.
Yeah,
And I agree with that. I think, as to your point, in the first 15, 20 minutes of that first half, they were solid. They did okay. They kind of survived. And then they just couldn't keep possession, and they got tested heavily for about 15, 20 minutes. But they survived. And then you move ahead and you give up that second goal, the first goal off kind of a fluke thing from Jack Elliott. And New England should have kept that game at 1-0. And so, it is what it is. They had that bad luck. But Jim
yeah,
Curtin highlights the fact that we did get lucky. We came away with a road point. But again, Curtin is highlighting the fact that we're not losing any matches. And he says, yes, are the fans upset that we're not winning? Sure, everybody wants to win, but we're not losing matches. It shows the character of the team to not lose a match. Now, I understand where Jim's coming from, and I don't disagree with him. I think there is some merit to drawing a match, especially on the road, as we talked about previously. You go to Nashville, you pull off a draw. That's impressive. That's great. But the problem is that that statement is said slightly out of context because you're blowing so many leads. It'd be great if you gave up the first goal and then you scored and came back and took the draw in Nashville. Wonderful.
yeah.
But the problem is you're not. You
No,
keep drawing because you keep blowing the chance to have 3 points.
yeah,
And that's where I think I get that Jim has to say that kind of stuff. I understand that he needs to keep the morale up and keep the positivity up. And I understand that. But the results don't tell the full story.
no.
What do you think of it? Or what do you think when you hear Jim say or emphasize that we're still drawing and pulling off results, even though we know the full story?
I think I can understand. I mean, again, the best sort of points or wins when you get a result, the best ones are when you don't play very well,
Yeah,
and you have to explain it. You don't play well, but you end up getting a result, which is always the
right.
best sort of feeling when you think those are the best sort of feelings. So again, a result like Saturday night would have been one of the better points this season. But I know what you mean because when you're in a winning position, you fail to take all 3 points, whether you lose like you did in Toronto,
Mhm.
and whether you're in the lead like against Nashville and AFC, the Red
Montreal, the
and the
Red
Montreal. Sorry, not the Revs. I was called Red Bulls. Sorry,
Rebels. Mhm.
that's what annoys you, isn't it? 'Cause you know what it could have been, what could have happened, or like if we just had scored that goal, if we just kept it tight, we'd have won the game. That's where it probably frustrates you the most. But again, obviously, I think the best points are the ones where, or the best results are the ones where you don't deserve anything and you end up stealing something completely undeserved and getting out there because that shows a resilient team. Because again, you can't fault this team for lack of effort or resiliency because this
Right.
is a resilient, hard-working team. It's just the end product in the final third, which they have lacked all season. And you could probably argue, I mean, if you perhaps had another full recognised striker, no disrespect to Paxton Harrison, I mean, going into any game, would you feel confidence in Sergio Santos and Paxton Harrison leading the line?
No, and that was very evident against New England. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
And even Jim said Paxton was a bit out of position.
yeah,
Obviously, right? He's not supposed to be up there. Um, but I mean, it is the hand that we're currently dealt. We have had a rotating door of strikers for 2 years now, whether it be Casper being the lead last year whether it be Corey Burke being the lead this year, being the main one that's healthy, and people say, "Oh well, I'm tired of Corey Burke. I'm tired of Corey Burke." Well, what other options do you have?
No,
I mean, seriously, and Sergio Santos couldn't even play more than 50 minutes this past week. He had to
no,
he got taken out for Burke. So, which personally for me terrified me. When as soon as I saw Santos go out for Burke, I'm thinking, okay, well there you just lost the pace that would have
you
helped
had, yeah,
any sort of movement forward. So I was surprised that not surprised that it happened because I know Sergio's health is important, but
yeah,
I was a bit worried when it happened because I didn't think they were going to win at that point
no.
with Burke and Paxton up top.
I think again,
Yeah,
sorry,
go
just
ahead.
go back again. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but this sort of situation. I mean, when you got four strikers, you usually hope that at least two of them are fit. But you've only got one player fit. This is where a team that is versatile in terms of how it can play is so beneficial because this
Yeah,
team is so one. It's such a one way street where they can only
they
play
are.
a narrow formation. You can either play the Christmas tree or you can play the narrow diamond. If this team had a winger or a couple of wingers or wide players, it would have worked perfectly. With the 4-2-3-1, you could play with two wide men, have the Sergio up front, and then you could just sort of, even like a 4-3-3, you can work around it. Like,
Hmm.
even like a 4-2-3-1, you sit like the Bedoya and Martinez in front of the back four, and then Gazdag, your two wingers, and Santos up front. But again, this is what this team lacks because it becomes predictable, even if when teams line up against Philadelphia, they sort of sometimes you'll see like I think the other week I don't know what game it was like it was either Portland or the Red Bulls, I believe. One of them lined up with like a back three, and they ended up
Yeah,
playing all back four. Initially, looked at the team sheet, it was a back four. They ended up playing with the back three in like high midfielders and wing backs. But again, that's the sort of thing that throws you off. When you look at the Union team, it's always narrow diamond or oh, I've only got one striker. That's probably going to be the Christmas tree where they play the two narrow attacking midfielders. You prepare for that sort of thing every single week. You're not when you are, when you're prepared to play the uni, you don't go. "Oh, they might play a back five today," which I think they've not done this year. They did it a couple of times last year. But you're not
right.
in the back of your mind going, "Okay, if they do end up playing a back five, this is what we do." So it's okay if they're playing narrow, even if they're playing two attacking midfielders, we know how we'll combat this. So it's sort of
Yep.
like easy to prepare for, and maybe that's some of the issues, some of their issues as well. Like teams are able to shut the union down because they know what to prepare for, as opposed to like a wild card. Like, okay, they'll end up playing like a 4-2-3-1 or something like that today.
And that's where Ua coming back is so important because
Yeah,
because as you see, he offers that playmaking ability. He offers the skill level to finish off a play that somebody else wouldn't. I mean, we've seen Sergio do this time and time again. Same with Burke, just not be able to finish their plays. There's no way they would have scored that goal, in my opinion, the way Ua did. So, and Jim highlighted that as well. He says, "Listen, we have 3 weeks now to prepare for Cincinnati. We're going to do everything we can to get acclimated and get into the flow of things, so that way he's fully ready." But in terms of the coaching here, and the reason why I mentioned coaching today and discuss that is because we saw a couple of things. One, Joe Girardi for the Phillies got fired today. We saw because his team, who is overly paid, is not performing. We
yeah,
also saw that Charlotte let go of their coach after 14 games. This in their first ever year in the MLS. I know our buddy Jose wanted to mention this tonight. It's a bit unprecedented, and it's a bit public with how there may be rumors that the DP was asking for him to get fired. There's a few speculations. I haven't gotten far into it because I was working all day and I just didn't have time
no.
to review it today. But I know Jose filled me in a bit, and it seems as if it's kind of player incentivized that they're releasing him from what we're seeing on Twitter and stuff like that. So from a coaching perspective, you know, do you think Curtin has is this a coaching issue that what the team struggles, or is this more of a roster and player issue, whether it be blowing leads, mental lapses, or just not being
Um,
present for these games, which we've seen now for 2 years straight, players constantly being absent in the forward position?
uh,
Because personally, I
God,
kind eventually it leads to coaching. Maybe once in a
yeah.
while it's not. It's a tough question, and I'm not trying to throw Jim on the bus or put him on the hot seat, but it is a reasonable question to ask. At what point do you blame coaching, or what point do you blame the players that are on the field? It's the same thing we
Uh,
saw with Doc Rivers. They blow lead after lead after lead. Is it the players or is it the coach?
You can even put it as far as recruitment, really, within its tenor. Do these guys do like?
or
Do
that.
these guys do the background checks and who they're actually signing? Because I mean, again, obviously Burke's been there for a while. They know Burke. They know Santos is injury prone.
Yep.
I mean, to be fair to Carranza, he's not missed time because of injury. He's missed time because of suspensions. You can't blame it on that. And Uwar, if there was any history of injury beforehand, they perhaps should have, looked into detail about that. I mean, again, if Uwar, I mean, it's a difficult one to say because you can't look at the consistency of how this team plays.
Yeah.
It's not like, um, it's not as if they play. I don't just like, like, you're missing Harry. Harry can play once a week, but everyone else seems to be really fit. So, but that's just a striking issue where Burke's sort of a bit injury prone. Santos is always injury prone, and looking at, do you know what I mean it's a
It's
difficult
it,
one. I'll probably say no. I don't think it's down to the coaching. If
okay.
it's potentially more down to the recruitment of, it's probably more down to the recruitment of the people above them who,
Mhm.
you know, what's that the word?
Who put the
Who,
players in place,
yeah,
basically.
they're the players, put the players in place. They should know if these players are injury prone, if they're going to cause any issues and things such as that.
Yeah, and I think going into the season, you already knew there was problems with Burke and Santos last year. Obviously, Casper was by himself so many times. He was dealing with injured players all the time. You bring in Carranza, he's been phenomenal. And then you bring in Uan, he's been hurt half the year. And I remember earlier in the season when he first got hurt with his thigh, they mentioned they pushed him kind of hard. He tweaked his thigh. Then at the after the Nashville game, he has the re-aggravation. So at one point, do you blame the staff? Do you blame UA? Do you blame the coach? Do you blame where does the blame go that these players cannot stay on the field? But
Yeah,
again, it's just kind of speculation. I'm just kind of having this conversation because there's not much to talk about tonight. But
yeah,
I think one thing we should highlight is the fact that Coach Curtin has been here for what seems like forever now. And we are lucky as a whole that he has been with our franchise for as long as he has because there's plenty of legitimate arguments that he could have been fired 5 years ago after another Open Cup loss, after a playoff loss, after they kind of fell apart after that 1 year with the Copa break. I mean, there's been arguments in the past that Coach Curtin could have been gone, but now as you see him currently, he's brought this team to a more relevant status. So,
yeah,
um, for the amount of concerns we have for Jim and his staff, which I think sometimes are legitimate, I think we're also fortunate as a fan base that we've had a coach who's been able to make the most out of his players and who work hard for him every single week. And as to your point you said earlier, the team's issues are not effort. This team has effort. They work their hardest every single week. I've never seen this team give up at any point in the season,
yeah,
and that does go to the gym and credit to Jim, because again, the players will play hard for the coach if they love their coach, and I think it's evident that they love Curtin. Would you agree
yeah,
with all that? With
yeah. I think absolutely. I think. I mean, again, the Union are lucky with what they got because there are many um, sort of teams around. Yeah, but that's especially where they're dictated by the stars. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
there's plenty of designated players like the likes of Higuain, etc., who believe they're better than what they are for the league. I mean, the Union sort of philosophy has always been understand, especially look for the underlying like no, sort of Scandinavian and sort of European talent from like the unknown leagues, like the Bundesliga two, the third division of Germany, which they got Kai Wagner from, and even Leon Flack. You know what I mean? They've always found these obscure players, which obviously has worked for them. I mean, obviously they're you sort of see teams like Inter Miami, they've gone off and got all these designated players. NYCFC are the same. A lot of these bigger teams. Obviously, with the Charlotte situation, I think you'll dive into it in a second. Like, again, they're a team that's sort of gone in. They've signed a couple of designated players to help fill out their roster. And again, that sometimes that isn't always the route to go. And that doesn't always lead to instant success.
yeah, that's very true, and it is interesting to look at whether that sets some sort of precedent moving forward. Will players try to have more of a control over the coach that's in charge of them, which as we've seen with the NBA, with LeBron James and the tampering that players do, it is a slippery slope. Once one team does it, the other team does it, and it's kind of a copycat effect. So that is a concern. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but it's an interesting point because Charlotte. has played better than most first year teams. I mean, they were in the playoff hunt, what, a couple weeks ago? I don't even know if they're in right now. Let me see the table. At the moment, they are currently about 2, 4, 6, 8. They're about ninth place. So it's not like they're playing poorly. They're playing enough to keep themselves afloat.
Yeah,
It's shocking to see mid-season like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they progress, whether they get better, whether they get worse. And for a team that's just starting out in their first year, like Charlotte is, not a great start to your franchise when that kind of drama or incident happens so early
yeah,
on. So it'll be very interesting to see how that progresses, and we'll keep track on that in the offseason. But yeah, to the coach point, it's we're fortunate we have that long standing consistency, which we
yeah,
don't really have with other franchises. You see the Eagles with Chip Kelly, and then you had Andy Reid for so long. And you go Chip Kelly, you go Doug Peterson, now you go Nick Sirianni. The Phillies have been a train wreck for years. The Flyers have been awful. The Sixers clearly need a new coach, but they're not going to change. Um, but you have Curtin. But Dave, one of the questions I want to talk about tonight was we still have another half of the season to go, and we still have a team that's not performing that great.
yeah.
Off the top of your head, what would be things that you could improve on, or what do you hope that Jim can improve on over the next couple weeks as we enter June against Cincinnati?
Um, Scoring goals. That's probably
Yeah,
the main thing. Again, the attacking work. Again, I think be more dynamic in the way the team plays because
yeah,
it. Again, I mean, we're being realistic. Kai Wagner could be gone by the time the Union play the next game, or
yeah,
by the end of July or mid July. It could be gone. That's the thing, and I think they need to find more ways to conjure up opportunities and be more dynamic in attack. Because once you lose Kai Wagner, you lose so much of your attack. Because I can't explain how often the team plays down the left hand side. They disrespect to Leon Flack, but he's not the guy they look for. It's always Kai Wagner,
yeah,
and if he goes, no disrespect to Matt Real. Matt Real isn't. Well, we haven't seen enough Matt Real, so I can't exactly judge him. But considering he barely ever plays, I'm not going to. I can't expect him to be as good as Kai Wagner either right away or do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, it's going to be um, a difficult. It'll be a difficult summer for sure. I mean, again, they'd have no excuse not to spend money either if they think, oh, we need to go out and get a very good left back who can attack. Because what I think did they have a 30% of the salon for Brandon Aronson?
yeah. And okay, you bring up a great point, Dave. When they sold Aronson first, and you sold McKenzie, and you have the money that comes in
Yeah,
with DeVries and Fontana and X, Y, and Z, everybody thought, okay, now we're going to go spend some money, and they did. They
yeah,
they brought in Mikael Ua, and they obviously wanted to address the forward position. So he needs to come back and play the way we know he can. But to the point is, you spend a lot of money on your academy, which is fine. You obviously have good products like Nathan Harriel, Paxson, McGlynn, etc., and company have done well, but you obviously need more. You need another striker. You brought in
yeah,
Riasco. Where the hell has he been? Is he ever going to come to the first team? Is he going to play consistently on the second team? He's not like he's playing a lot on the second team either.
no,
So what's the deal with him? You saw the same thing with
yeah,
Davo. You bring in players, but they don't see the pitch. Is that again? That goes back to coaching. Are these players not the right fit? It goes back to the front office. Are they not scouting these players correctly, and they come in and they just don't do anything?
yeah,
Why is that the case? It's happened now 3 times. Happened with Orvik, it happened with Davo, and now it's happening with Riasco on the second team. Why aren't
yeah,
these players playing? That is or even Bueno. Jesus Bueno hasn't played all season. Why? Why
yeah,
is it so predictable that every single sub that's going to come off the bench? Every single formation. And you're right, losing Kai Wagner only makes the team more predictable,
yeah,
which is you're, if you're going to lose any player, I'd rather lose Jose Martinez, because Jose Martinez can be replaced easier, in my opinion, with
yeah.
Flock or Elliott compared to Kai, who is very arguably the best left back in MLS. So,
Absolutely. But I
i
mean, again, if you lose
yeah,
Kai
go ahead.
Wagner,
Mhm.
you lose Kai Wagner, you're going to make seven. You're going to make a good sum of money for Kai Wagner. You've just got $9 million off of, or £9 million, whatever you want to say, for the
Yeah.
Brendan Aronson deal because they had I believe they had a 30% sell-on fee. So
Mhm.
again, that's $9 million now on top of whatever money you made on the sales beforehand. Then add on whatever else other money you have from the Kai Wagner thing. There is no excuse not to go out and spend that money to try and be more diverse. Go out getting a solid left back from somewhere in Europe or South America. Go out and get a winger. Go out and get a tricky player that can make your team more dynamic. Add a bit of pace to the team. Make your team a bit more dangerous. Do you know what I mean? Like when teams facing you, they know they're going to face a hard-working, gritty, aggressive team. But
Right.
sort of the only two or three players that they really say, obviously, whilst not playing, it's Burke or Santos up front. The only sort of two or three players they look out for will be Wagner, Gazdag, and Carranza. No disrespect to the other players. If you're looking at it from a defensive standpoint, none of them are going to cause you any issues or worries. So it's going to be
Right.
they need to they need to expand. They need to be more dynamic. They need to have a plan B. They need to have more options to be um, more
And,
diverse in how they attack.
and I think that's you nailed it with the plan B. I think that's what this team needs to figure out between now, June 3rd, and June 18th. What is your plan B? Because we thought when we brought in Davo last year, he was going to be that playmaker, that difference maker, that dynamic person. We saw all the highlight clips and we're like, oh my God, Davos, he can do so much. He can be gritty. He can do this. Didn't see the field, right?
Yeah,
So if you're not going to bring anybody in over these next 3 weeks, and Mika Ua is healthy, and you have Carranza finally off suspension,
yeah,
that's wonderful. You have the best three players up top. You feel comfortable, but the problem is what happens if they're not having a good game? Are you just going to replace Flock with McGlynn every single week? Are you just
yeah,
going to leave Bedoya in? Why can't Quinn Sullivan see extended minutes? Why is Paxton Aronson seeing so many minutes, but Quinn is not? In no offense to Paxton, but Quinn Sullivan's the one who had an amazing Argentina run and had like what is it, 3 goals or whatever it was down in Argentina. Why is he not seeing more time? Why can't
no,
he
yeah,
replace Bedoya? And that goes back to coaching. I'm not trying to be too negative today, but I'm kind of feeling it with this team right now. Is that you've played well enough to be in second place? That's wonderful, great. But the problem is that we don't yet know what this team is capable of, and we also have realized the fact that this team has no backup plan.
no, and
And
it's been the same.
that is a huge problem for me at least. Because if it doesn't work with plan A, they're just going to stick with it until it doesn't until they draw every single
Yeah,
match. And that's a
or
problem.
and it's just like for like swaps. You don't change the system up like it's just frustrating to see. I think it's stretched to last year as well. They haven't got players that can come on. No disrespect to like the likes of Paxton Aronson and Quinn Sullivan because they're just kids. Jack McGinn, they're just kids. You can't
Yeah.
expect them to be these game changers right away. They haven't got players that can come on and change a game. Obviously,
Right.
obviously, obviously, Mikel is if he's on your bench, Mikel is. But I mean, going off your strongest 11, it's Uar and Carranza up front, and then you got Santos and Burke. Santos could occasionally change the game, but Santos is a 50-50 player. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he's terrible. Corey Burke, as we've seen with Corey, he's not on the best run of form. But again, like there's no players that you look at in this team that will come off the bench and go, "We need to get him on the pitch now." You sit watching a uni game,
Yeah.
and you'll sit there and you go, "Well, they're gonna sub off both their strikers. One will come off after an hour, and the other will come off like 75th minute."
Yes.
That happens every single game. It's like, okay, we'll take off our two best strikers and chuck on our sub strikers when we're drawing 1-1. That doesn't work. You haven't got a player like NYCFC, for example. You know what I mean? Like they've got so much talent in that team. Like they're losing the game 1-0. They need to score a goal. I mean, like just look at their team. Oh, fine, we'll just chuck on Heber, we'll chuck on Zalem. Castellanos is on the bench. Okay, we'll chuck Castellanos on this game. Do you know what I mean, things like that. The Union don't have that sort of. Don't really have that.
Well, that's the thing too, is that again, you nailed it. When this team is fully operational, okay, everybody's a go. You have Ua, Carranza, Gazda. You have the three midfielders, Bedoya, Flock, and Jose, and you have your back four, right? The 65th minute comes around, or the 70th minute, they'll either do a double switch and they'll take both of the strikers out and put Santos and Burke,
Yeah,
or they'll bring in McGlynn for Flock, or they'll maybe sometimes bring in Paxton for Gazdag sometimes at like the 85th minute or something like that. Their their substitutions are really predictable. So I think to myself, if Bueno was going to come onto the pitch, who the hell would he replace? If Sullivan was going to come on earlier, like the 70th minute, who would he replace on a consistent basis, like we've seen with everybody else? And also on top of that, you replacing the strikers with Santos and Burke doesn't necessarily change the way this team attacks. If anything, it makes you worse because you have now less dynamic players up top. So why is it that we are so focused on having such a defensive midfield? Because I know
Yeah,
this team is defensive minded and we are defensive based, and Jim Curtin preaches the fact that we are a team that has to be defensive minded. But why does it seem like we're almost afraid to be aggressive on the attack and
yeah,
put Sullivan out there, put Pax, McGlynn on the left hand? Why can't we take out Bedoya and Flock and put McGlynn and Sullivan? Why can't we try transitioning Flock to the six and put Martinez for Bedoya and put McGlynn on the left or Sullivan on the
yeah,
left? Why is it so hard for this team to go for it offensively? I don't understand that, and that to me again that's a big concern because eventually, come playoff time, you're going to have to adapt. When you play a whole season, you have created a blueprint for how to beat you, basically,
yeah,
right? So the team that you're playing against now has a blueprint. Okay, they played 30 some games. How did this team lose? How did this team win?
yeah,
You take off their strikers and they're helpless because now Gazdag is eliminated because he can't create by himself, and Bedoya and Flock aren't going to do anything. And then
no,
even if they get replaced, now McGlynn isn't fast enough to really make anything happen outside of a nice few passes here or there.
yeah.
Am I crazy for saying that Jim sometimes seems afraid to go for it?
Um, I get it becomes predictable as well in terms of like it's not like they make changes to the starting 11 consistently. So it's not like oh we might when you go for a team like
Mm,
he came off in the last game with a little knock. He might not play it. But it's like Ali Bedoya, you know Bedoya's going to play him if he's come off with a slight knock. It's like when you're game planning for a team, it's not just the formation, the way that you play, it's the starting 11.
yeah.
It's the actual team. They don't change the team again. Like the back five, I can understand. But you
Yep.
know what I mean, they don't try and like change things up. You go, okay, Leon's not been the best in attack this game. We'll move him into the six, or we'll put Jose out on the left and see what he can do. Oh, Jack, we need to make a change here. We'll play Jack and Paxton in the team or Quinn in the team, whatever. It's really they only do it if it's forced. I mean, again,
Yeah.
perhaps we're moaning too much, but there are consistent patterns in this team which you can sort of pick apart, if you know what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. And again, we're entering the break. I don't think May was as great as we saw it or we wanted, but it also wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So
Yeah,
we're trying to be optimistic there. But the reality is, this team basically saw their schedule, said the Open Cup is by far the least important match. We're going to put it to the side and go for the MLS, which is fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But the problem is that they're not good enough right now. And
yeah,
it's already June 3rd, and they're not good enough yet. Now, of course, there's a couple months ago. Of course, there's time to fix the squad, but we have not yet seen this squad either healthy or fully operational, and it's been about a couple months now. And they always say, "Oh, well, we haven't seen this team at its full potential." Well, if you say that all season long, then that is your full potential,
yeah,
and that's what I'm concerned about. Is going to the playoffs, the second or first seed or third seed, getting bumped in the second round, and we start back all over again next year. That's
yeah.
my biggest concern. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too negative today, Dave. Maybe it's a
That's
long
all.
day at work, and
Yeah.
I'm just taking it out on the Union. I don't know.
I think again, I mean, honestly, perhaps I've been a bit too harsh, but again, there were noticeable holes or the noticeable issues in this team that have been through there since last year. It's no versatility, it's no plan B. Like
Yeah.
they have to play a specific way, and if it doesn't work, as you said, we carry on. It's like beating your head against the wall until you crack the wall or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it just, it's frustrating again. I mean, again, when the Union are on it, they're on it. They're great. But I mean, this season, you said they created a blueprint. They did the exact same stuff last year.
Yep.
Teams just have to look at it. They've really got a full season of what the Union could do under their belt already, and now they just continue to do it. I mean, they need a plan B. There are games where they look somewhat helpless in attack, and it'd be perfect to chuck on a player with pace, that wide, change the system, but it never works. I mean, perhaps we're being too negative, but
No,
yeah,
but
it's
you
just
saw
frustrating.
you saw it last year. I believe
Yeah,
it was the home match against Columbus or New England. I can't remember which one. I might have been New England. You took up Bedoya. You brought in Quinn Sullivan. He had some play. I remember I was at the game in the press box that game. That's why I remember it so specifically. Is he brought in Quinn. He ended up being very hustle and was able to get to a ball much faster than Bedoya was. He ended up creating a corner kick, and I think it was the kick that led to Casper's goal to tie New England. It was something along those lines that was like, oh wow, look what happens when you have pace on the right hand side besides Nathan Harriel or Olivia Mbaizo. You create that opportunity.
Yeah,
Um, so no, I listen. I think you're right. I think this is how all the fans feel. They want to be optimistic, but they're not blind either, and they see the writing on the walls, and it's a bit worrisome. It's a bit worrisome,
yeah,
especially with Cincinnati coming to town and NYCFC and everything else after that. So besides that, Dave, I know we're trying to keep this short because I have to work after this, unfortunately.
yeah.
So
That's
trying to
fair.
keep it short. So you enter the break. We have a couple weeks off. I know you said you wanted to do a piece, right? A kind of like a player award piece. What were you thinking about that?
I mean, I think obviously I think that was more of a substitute if we can't get a show in over the next couple of
Yep.
weeks. Obviously, your schedule and everything. I mean, if we are able to get a show in next week or the following week, we'll do the show. But if not, I'll do me and Mike will talk and I'll write up an article basically about our feelings sort of like the mid season awards so far. If not, we'll do it as a show. Sort of a show to a show over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we'll let you guys know within the next week or so of what we're gonna do. But yeah, I mean, there's two options there, and we'll certainly be picking one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have about, was it 15 days, right? 15 days till next match. I haven't gone to a game in probably a month and a half, sort of what it
Yeah,
feels like, if not longer. So I'm excited to get back. They play
absolutely.
on Saturday night at 7:30. They host Cincinnati, so that should be a good one. But before we go, let me read off the sponsors, and then we'll call it a night. First up, we have, oh my gosh, my screen's going crazy. We have Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code AATBirds at manscaped.com. You have OddsJam, the number one software platform for sportsbook bandits. They use an arbitrage calculator and more, so you never lose a bet again. Sign up today at oddsjam.com. You have
Yeah,
Statement Games at statementgames.com. For a fun new way to fantasy sports entertainment, you can win gift cards and prizes. It's free to sign up at statementgames.com. And then we have Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant in Allentown. You can have Italian cuisine, which also includes pizza, pasta, burgers, sandwiches, and much more. So it's a great place to get a variety of food available for pickup or delivery. Order today at vinnyspizzapa.com. And of course, the across the pitch gear can be acquired at AAT Sports Network. They also have tons of other gear. Johnny gets crazy with the Eagles gear. So if you're
yeah,
looking for something for the football season, check that out. A lot of great gear coming that way. I'll have to wear one of my shirts from him within the near future. But Dave, that wraps up our show. Any last thoughts
yeah.
here?
No, none for me. Really. I mean, obviously, everyone
Yep.
enjoy your weekend. I mean,
Yes.
I believe the Phillies are storming right now. That I've seen everyone going mental on the timelines. Yeah, I believe the
Pretty
Phillies are
wild.
actually storming. Oh, the Phillies are 10. The Phillies are 10-0 up on the Los Angeles Angels.
Are they really? Wow, look at that. I haven't watched
Yeah,
a Phillies game in far too long. I always find
uh,
it funny. People will suffer and punish themselves through a 5-hour Phillies game, but they won't watch a 90-minute Union game.
yeah. But I mean,
Why
you
do
could that could end in a draw though. Why would you watch 90 minutes for a draw when you
why?
can watch five
Why
hours
would
for a win?
why would you do that? Yeah, nothing really too much crazy these next 2 weeks. We'll probably go
Yeah,
out this weekend, have a good time. So drink safely. Have a good time, everybody. Happy Friday night.
go Union.
Go go Union, dude.
Yeah.